Good evening and happy Friday. It's not really been a great weather day, mid to upper 30s here on Long Island in New York, and very kind of sloppy, miserable, but at least we have some melting of snow finally. We had seemingly feet of snow and 20-foot snow drifts for, the last 8 weeks because the weather's been so cold. So, you don't throw it back. This was a lousy day, but it was necessary to get rid of a lot of this snow, and hopefully temperature stays above freezing. All right, well, now that we got the weather out of the way, what we got to talk about. So, a movie that I really enjoy, that just celebrated, if you want to use that word, I don't really think it's a celebration, but 31st anniversary of being released. A film that I've oddly never spoken of on the channel in any capacity, despite my deep affection for its quite extraordinary late great star, and the fact that it's a movie that dares to try something different within the confines of what amounts to a serial killer story, but it's told in a very strange, unconventional way for a serial killer story. So the official release date of February 17, 1995, the mystery suspense thriller Just Cause opened in theaters. Now, history tells us the film is notable for a number of reasons. The most important reason for me as a historian is it marks what would have to be considered the final leading man type of role for the iconic star that I referenced, Sir Sean Connery. It's the last role that you could call, not that it's his last lead, but it's the last leading man kind of role where he's doing alpha male shit despite the fact that he's in his early 60s. This is the sort of role that Clint Eastwood could have played in this era, and Clint Eastwood did play in this era. And even though those two guys, they often talked about working together, they both loved golf, and their other buddies, Beatty and Nicholson, that would have been great. That was the idea with Space Cowboys, that Clint wanted to get Redford and Nicholson and Beatty. Man, that would have been so great, but I love the movie that they made, especially Donald Sutherland did. One of the funniest parts, Donald Sutherland is not necessarily that funny in a lot of films, but man, does he crush it in Space Cowboys. But Clint was still headlining major motion pictures in 1995, and so was Sean Connery. Unlike Clint, there had been rumors that Connery's health had slipped, that he was not doing that great, and then he kind of made this comeback with Just Cause, but he had been active. He did Rising Sun with Wesley Snipes in 93. That was a modest success. It was a huge best-selling book from Michael Crichton, who Michael Crichton was everywhere. He had Disclosure, which ended up the movie with Michael Douglas, of course, and Demi Moore. He had Rising Sun. He had Jurassic Park, two massive movies from 1993, both based on books by Michael Crichton. But you move ahead to 1995 and you have Sean Connery headlining this mystery thriller, serial killer suspense, plot twist kind of movie where he plays this very, it's a bit of an atypical role for Connery in the sense that this was before Finding Forrester, he plays that kind of character. He plays an academic. And Sean Connery, not that he didn't play characters who were brilliant. James Bond probably has 160 IQ as presented. But he plays an academic in this movie. He plays a guy who, he seems to solve this cold case, this murder case, where the wrong guy got pinned with the crime. And there are two other big actors in the film, big actors of the era who are still major players to this day, in Ed Harris and Lawrence Fishburne. And in the world of this film, Connery's character of this kind of college professor who is a bit of an armchair, I don't want to say philosopher, but an armchair problem solver. His character reminds me a little bit of, I'm sorry, very few of you are going to know who I'm talking about, Francis X. Delaney. There's a great name. A terrific author named Lawrence Sanders wrote a series of books where the principal character was this retired, I think, detective named Francis X. Delaney. He's retired in most of the books. And Frank Sinatra played the character in one movie, which was somewhat successful, called The First Deadly Sin. But Francis X. Delaney, normally, at the point that we know him in the books, He's just a guy sitting around solving crimes. He's not active as a police officer. And Sean Connery's character in Just Cause, his professor, he's just a professor. But he's the sort of personality, if his bullshit detector is going off, if he has some suspicions that there has been a wrong engineered by the state. This is one of those paranoia movies, the government. Once again, I love that word from JFK, the Michael Rooker character screaming about the government. If you think that the government is engaging in wrongdoings and you want to show that the government is up to no good, you show them. So Sean Connery's character becomes convinced that this young man, played by somebody who looked like he was going to be a bigger star than he was, terrific actor Blair Underwood, who had been super strong on LA Law. I mean, you could argue that he's one of the highlights of that fantastic Stephen Bochco program, which aired for years. It was part of NBC's vaunted Thursday night lineup, along with, I hate to say it, The Cosby Show, which was earlier in Thursday night. But LA Law was the 10 p.m. time slot, that extraordinary. We had Family Ties and The Cosby Show. And it wasn't just that every show was a hit. It was that it was great television. It was great television before television was as great as it would later become with streaming, with so many more options and so many fantastic writers, producers, directors, and performers taking part in TV. Well, Blair Underwood was a home run on LA Law. I'm pretty sure he was nominated for multiple Emmys and Golden Globes. He was great. And in this movie, he plays a young man who has been unjustly accused of a horrific capital crime. It would be like, to use another movie from 1995, if the Sean Penn character in Dead Man Walking, if he actually didn't commit the heinous crimes that he is accused of in the world of that film. So Sean Connery starts to dig into this case, and as part of his research to try to prove that this young man did not commit this horrendous crime, he has to interview this guy named Blair Sullivan, I think is his name. And Blair Sullivan is played by Ed Harris. And when the movie was coming out, I think Ed Harris realized that this was kind of a little bit of what you would call a trashy potboiler kind of a movie. This was not going to win any Oscars, Just Cause. It was just, you wanted to get people into theaters, you wanted to entertain them, have some colorful characters, a little Louisiana Bayou activity, maybe some corrupt police, and again, the government doing bad things. This is what we're presented with. So Ed Harris, when he was interviewed about his role, and Ed Harris had a big year in 95, he was nominated for supporting actor, and if I had a vote, he had my vote for best supporting actor as Gene Kranz in Ron Howard's, I'm sorry, Mel, the best movie of 1995. I love Braveheart, but Apollo 13 should have won that award. But he is marvelous, Ed Harris, that is in Apollo 13. And this was the other, kind of big, high-profile movie come out earlier in the year. And I don't know which film was shot first. These things I usually know. In this instance, I'm not sure. I assume Just Cause was shot first. But Ed Harris, when he was being interviewed about this lunatic character, this death row inmate, right? A little bit like, not Francis Dollarhide, but a little bit like the Hannibal Lecter of Red Dragon and Manhunter, where he's behind bars like Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, and he's ostensibly trying to help Sean Connery solve this crime. So Ed Harris was asked, what do you think? How do you compare this character that you're playing to Hannibal Lecter? If Hannibal Lecter was in a room with this character that you played here, what do you think would happen? And Ed Harris, who was not known for necessarily being that jovial of an interviewer, he's laughing and laughing. He says, I got to be honest with you, I don't think that Sir Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter would be that impressed with this guy. I just thought he's giggling and laughing. He didn't think that Lecter would be impressed by this guy. Well, the way that Harris plays this character, he's arguably even more insane than Hannibal Lecter. So maybe he would be impressed. Maybe you're like, this guy is great. I don't know. So as Connery's professor digs deeper and deeper, and he seems to produce proof that exonerates Blair Sullivan's character, he runs afoul of an apparent rogue, corrupt cop played by Lawrence Fishburne, who was just knocking it out of the park, dating back to Boys in the Hood, the late John Singleton, that just fantastic movie from 1991, and his Oscar nomination for What's Love Got to Do with It? Man, is he great as Ike Turner. Just a horrendous human being, but somehow Fishburne, that amazing charisma, he manages to give you a little bit of an idea as to why Tina would have even stayed around this guy for so long. You got to have something. As played by Lawrence Fishburne, I mean, he could have won Best Actor. It was just the wrong year. There were just too many great performances across every possible category. Films released in 1993. So Fishburne sinks his teeth into a really juicy role, a colorful cop who seems to be a rogue cop. He seems to be an antagonistic cop, and there are moments where he appears to threaten the life of our intrepid hero, played by Sir Sean Connery. But you feel like, because, and I hate to say it this way, when I saw the movie in theaters when it opened, I saw it opening weekend, so yeah, 31 years ago. Man, I was only 21 at the time. Jesus, sorry. But you start to understand certain patterns in movies, and there are things that you get. Like if you know that there's a character that's referenced, but you don't meet a certain character. In movies in the 90s, it was always going to be played by a big actor in either a cameo or an extended cameo. That's why, for example, it's not a surprise when Ben Kingsley shows up late in the movie Dave, which was 1993 also. What's Love Got to Do with It? Same year. You know that a big actor, they keep referencing the vice president, the vice president, the vice president, the vice president, but you don't meet the vice president, and you know it's going to be somebody important, and here comes Sir Ben Kingsley. So I knew, just based on what you would call deductive inference, that Fishburne was not simply going to play a rogue cop. He was not just going to play a dirty cop. He wasn't going to play a cop who was just a tool of the state or the government to engage in nefarious doings to frame an innocent man. So I didn't know exactly what there was going to be a twist with this character, but I knew it got to be something. It had to be something. And sure enough, it was. And I remember after seeing the movie, it may have been the same cluster of interviews where Ed Harris was just yucking it up about whether or not Hannibal Lecter would get along with this nut job that he played in this movie. Lawrence Fishburne, it may have been Steve Kometko. Steve Kometko, a really good interviewer. He has a podcast nowadays, but he worked for the E! Entertainment Television. I'm not sure if it was Kometko, but whoever was interviewing Lawrence Fishburne, they kind of gave away too much plot when they pointed out how much, I mean, it's kind of obvious. You're not going to say, I thought this movie was trash. But the interviewer said, I really enjoyed this film. I kind of was a little iffy in the first act. I wasn't really getting it. And I hated your character. I hated your character. And that's all he said. But he said it in such a way that somebody who saw the movie, okay, I understand why he phrased it. I hated your character. And Fishburne let out that great laugh of his, and he said, that's why I wanted to play this part, because I knew that it was going to challenge audiences, that people were going to think one thing, and the more you learn about what's going on in the world of the story, the more sense Lawrence Fishburne's character makes. And this is a story that has a lot of different conspiracy theories floated, and I don't mean JFK, speaking of Connery, the next year with Nicolas Cage, one of the great moments in the history of cinema, when Nicolas Cage at the very end, oh my God, honey, you will not believe who killed Kennedy. Man, I was screaming when that happened. The audience was going crazy. What a great way for that movie to end. But this is a film that has a lot of conspiracies within the story, and they don't turn the way you expect them to, and I appreciated that. And so when I exited the theater at the end of the film, I was very happy. I would have given the movie, like kind of as some of the, like Christian Harloff and some of the other podcasters who have movie podcasts, like an out-of-theater reaction. If I was doing an out-of-theater reaction on that kind of cold Friday morning or afternoon in 1995, I would have given this film 3 to 3.5 stars. I was with the story. I loved the performances. I liked the fact that Ed Harris, as much as he was kind of making fun of his character, Ed Harris seemed like he believed in what he was doing, and it's a good, well-orchestrated, three-dimensional performance by Connery, and I love Blair Underwood in his role, and Fishburne really brings it. And I should also point out, I almost forgot, an actress who is somewhat polarizing to certain people, Kate Capshaw. There are people who still think that she sucks in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I dismiss that. I think that's nonsense. I love her performance in that movie. And, she and Steven Spielberg have been together 4 decades now. God bless them, more than 4 decades. God bless them. I hope that they're still happy and doing great. I'm an enormous fan of his. And she has a very interesting role in Just Cause, and I won't say anything else, but she wasn't in that many movies in this era. She really wasn't. She didn't work that much in the 90s. And it was really good to see her pop up again in a colorful supporting role where you're not really sure, is there misdirection with her character, what's her story? And it's just like all of the performances work. And in the manner of later in the 90s, when Paul Newman had his final lead in the movie Twilight, again, the last, what I would consider a conventional leading man role, where he's doing alpha male type of stuff, where his character is driving the action. It's so great to see Connery looking fit, looking healthy, and, he was going to go ahead, as I say, and make The Rock the following year, which is, it's almost, you could say it's the action movie that defines the decade. But that's neither here nor there. So Just Cause, it did okay at the box office. It turned a profit. It didn't do tremendously well. The budget was a little higher than I think it needed to be. Maybe Connery got more money than I thought. But it was budgeted and marketed somewhere in the 25 million range, and it grossed, again, somewhere between 35 and 40. So, yeah, it was a hit technically, but it was not an enormous hit. But the Rotten Tomatoes score, I don't really understand why the film is not fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't know, critics just didn't spark to it. Maybe they were expecting something else. Maybe they had a little bit of plot twist fatigue or serial killer fatigue, but it just didn't do that well with critics. I think that it's maybe in the high 40s or low 50s, and I just don't get it. You watch this movie now, 30 plus years later, I think this film is a kind of an underrated, kind of hidden gem. And another movie from 98 released around the same time frame, 3 years later, Palmetto, which I've discussed on the channel. That's another film that has a bizarrely low Rotten Tomatoes score, and I just don't understand. Well, in that case, the plot was very reminiscent of Fargo, and a lot of critics said it ripped off Fargo, when in fact, that film was in the pipeline before Fargo. It just took a while for Volker Schlondorff's Palmetto, starring Woody Harrelson. What a great performance by Woody Harrelson. And the name of that book that became Palmetto was Just Another Sucker. Man, Woody fucking kills it in that movie. But Just Cause is one of those films that if you want to put it into the category of the best movie you've never seen, you can. It's a really, really solid film with all of these colorful performances and plot twists aplenty. But when you get to the end, everything is logical, everything makes sense, and I appreciate the deliberate misdirection of the story. So this is a film I only saw one additional time after watching it in theaters, and it's worth it. I think that it's free on Tubi. I'm pretty sure that you could find it on streaming. I don't know anybody who has seen this movie who does not like it. See it for Connery, see it for Ed Harris chewing scenery, and again, the Kate Capshaw, interesting character, and Lawrence Fishburne, really, really great in a key supporting role of a kind of adversarial rogue cop who may have more going on than he seems. So, Just Cause released the third week of February. That year it was February 17th, 1995. We'll just say that we'll put it in the category of the best movie you've never seen instead of just talking about a movie anniversary. Highly recommended, super watchable, and another example, if people want to know why was Sean Connery such a big deal for so long, this is one of those movies that I recommend to see him in his older era, just commanding the screen with a presence that few others have ever had. I hope you have a wonderful Friday night. This has been episode 677 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. And here's to Friday night, and here's to a terrific weekend. I'll see you all on the other side. Peace.